Hello, and welcome to Sleep Stories World. I'd like to invite you to step into a world of relaxation and tranquility with this bedtime story, designed to help you unwind and de-stress. By engaging in this story, you can embark on a journey that nurtures and soothes your mind, promoting overall well-being through sound, restful sleep. Before we begin, let's prepare your space for rest. Ensure you're somewhere comfortably cool, dark, and quiet. If you need to adjust anything, your curtains, your temperature, your pillows, please do so now. When you're ready, lie down and let yourself settle into your bed. Feel the weight of your body being supported. You may want to cover yourself with a light blanket as your body relaxes. Now, gently close your eyes. There's nothing you need to see anymore tonight. Your only task now is to be here, allowing yourself to receive the gift of rest. Take a deep breath in through your nose and exhale slowly through your mouth. Breathe in deeply, feeling your chest expand. Breathe out, feeling your body sink deeper into your bed. In and out. With each breath, you're signaling to your body that it's safe to rest. Now, imagine being surrounded by a warm, vibrant light. This light is gentle and comforting, carrying with it a deep sense of peace and safety. As you breathe in, let this warm light fill your chest. As you breathe out, imagine it spreading gently through your upper body. Breathe in, and let the light expand through your shoulders, your arms, your back. Breathe out, and feel it filling your stomach, your neck, your head, every space within you glowing softly. If a thought comes by, acknowledge it like watching a leaf float by on a gentle stream, and then let it drift away. There will be time for those thoughts later. Now is for rest. On your next breath in, let the warm light travel downward. Feel it reach your hips, your thighs, your knees. Breathe out, and sense it flowing down to your ankles, to your toes. Every part of you now is surrounded by this gentle, warm glow. You are completely enveloped in comfort and peace. Focus on your breath and the warm light surrounding you. If your mind wanders, simply guide it back, gently, to your breath, to the light. You are safe. You are comfortable. You are exactly where you need to be. As we move into tonight's story, allow yourself to let go even more. Let the words wash over you like a gentle tide. You don't need to follow every detail. Simply receive the story as a gift, a soft companion as you journey toward sleep. And now, let us begin. Scott and his men continued their grueling march across the polar plateau through the final days of December and into January 1912. The work was relentless, each day beginning with the struggle to thaw frozen boots and clothing, forcing down a breakfast of pemmican and biscuits, then harnessing themselves to the sledges for another 8 or 9 hours of hauling across the ice. On December 22nd, at approximately 87 degrees 32 minutes south, Scott made a crucial decision about who would form the final polar party. His original plan had called for a 4-man team to make the final push to the pole, but standing there on the plateau, Scott changed his mind. He would take 5 men to the pole instead: himself, Edward Wilson, Henry Birdie Bowers, Lawrence Titus Oates, and Edgar Evans. This decision, made in the moment, created unforeseen problems. All their equipment, tents, sleeping bags, food rations, cooking fuel, had been calculated for 4 men. Adding a 5th meant tighter quarters in the tent, less food per person, and more weight to haul. It also meant that 1 man would be without skis, as they had only brought 4 pairs for the polar party. That man was Bowers, who would have to walk alongside the others while they glided on skis, expending considerably more energy with each step. The remaining support teams turned back toward Cape Evans, carrying letters from the polar party to loved ones at home. Scott wrote to his wife, Kathleen, and to his supporters, describing the journey and expressing confidence in their success. These letters would reach civilization, but others that Scott would write later would not. The 5 men pushed onward. On January 9, 1912, they reached 88 degrees 23 minutes south, surpassing Shackleton's previous record of furthest south. They were now closer to the pole than any human had ever been, with the exception of Amundsen's party, though Scott did not yet know this. For a brief moment, they allowed themselves to hope that they might still be first. But on January 16, as they approached 89 degrees south, just 60 miles from the pole, Bowers noticed something dark against the white expanse ahead. As they drew closer, their hearts sank. It was a black flag, left by Amundsen to mark his route. The Norwegians had been here. The race was lost. The next day, January 17, 1912, Scott's party reached the South Pole. There, undeniable and stark against the snow, stood Amundsen's tent, Polheim, with the Norwegian flag snapping in the wind. Scott wrote in his journal that night, "The worst has happened. All the daydreams must go. It will be a wearisome return." The disappointment was crushing. They had hauled sledges for over 800 miles, endured unimaginable hardships, lost their motor sledges and ponies, and now they had arrived only to find they were second. Inside the tent, they found Amundsen's letter to King Haakon and the note addressed to Scott. They took photographs, solemn images that show 5 exhausted men standing by the Norwegian flag, their faces revealing the weight of their defeat. Wilson, the expedition doctor and scientist, took geological samples even here at the pole, maintaining the scientific mission despite their personal disappointment. They remained at the pole for only a day and a half. There was nothing to be gained by lingering, and every hour delayed was an hour later they would arrive back at their supply depots. On January 19th, they began the 800-mile journey back to Cape Evans, now facing not only the physical challenge of the return but also the psychological burden of failure. The return journey began badly and grew steadily worse. Edgar Evans, the largest and physically strongest of the group, began to deteriorate first. He had suffered a head injury from a fall into a crevasse during the ascent, though he had initially seemed to recover. Now, on the plateau, he became increasingly confused and clumsy. His fingers were severely frostbitten, making it difficult for him to help with camp duties. On February 17, 1912, at the bottom of the Beardmore Glacier, Evans collapsed and died. The exact cause was likely a combination of his head injury, hypothermia, and complete physical exhaustion. The 4 remaining men continued. They were behind schedule, moving slower than planned, and the weather was turning against them. The Antarctic summer was ending, and temperatures were dropping rapidly. By late February, they were regularly experiencing temperatures of -40°F and below, far colder than expected for that time of year. Modern analysis of weather records suggests that the summer of 1912 was exceptionally cold across Antarctica, perhaps one of the coldest on record. Captain Lawrence Oates, a cavalry officer who had been in charge of the ponies, was suffering terribly from frostbite in his feet and an old war wound from the Boer War that had never properly healed. Each step was agony, and he knew he was slowing the party down. On the night of March 16 or the morning of March 17, Scott's journal entries from this period are difficult to date precisely. Oates made a decision that would become legendary for its selflessness and courage. It was blowing a blizzard outside the tent, with wind and snow creating whiteout conditions. Oates stood up and spoke what have become some of the most famous last words in exploration history. "I am just going outside and maybe some time." He walked out into the storm and was never seen again. He was 32 years old. Oates knew he was dying and chose to remove himself from the group in the hope that without him slowing them down, the others might reach safety. His body has never been found, somewhere beneath the accumulating snows of the Ross Ice Shelf. Scott, Wilson, and Bowers pushed on, but they were now desperately weak, frostbitten, and running short of fuel. The fuel shortage was partly due to the extreme cold causing the leather gaskets on their fuel cans to contract, allowing precious paraffin to evaporate. They were also suffering from scurvy, though they didn't fully recognize it. Their diet, while sufficient in calories, lacked vitamin C, and the symptoms, weakness, bleeding gums, old wounds reopening, were beginning to manifest. By March 21, 1912, they were just 11 miles from One Ton Depot, where abundant supplies awaited them. 11 miles, a distance they could have covered in a single day's march under normal conditions. But Scott's feet were so badly frostbitten that he could barely walk, and all 3 men were at the limits of their endurance. Then another blizzard struck, pinning them in their tent. They waited for the weather to clear, but it did not. Day after day, the storm continued. They had fuel for perhaps 2 more hot meals, a little food, but no strength to move in the blizzard. Scott used these final days to write letters, to his wife Kathleen, to his mother, to Bowers' mother, to Oates' mother, to Wilson's wife Oriana, and to the British public. These letters, found with their bodies months later, are remarkable documents, eloquent, thoughtful, and devoid of self-pity. In his message to the public, Scott wrote, "We took risks, we knew we took them. Things have come out against us, and therefore we have no cause for complaint." He detailed the challenges they had faced, the unexpectedly cold weather, the shortage of fuel, the difficult surface conditions. He defended his decisions and praised his companions. He wrote, "Had we lived, I should have had a tale to tell of the hardship, endurance, and courage of my companions which would have stirred the heart of every Englishman." The last dated entry in Scott's diary is March 29, 1912, though he may have survived a day or two longer. The blizzard that trapped them lasted at least 9 days. In the end, they died together in their tent, just 11 miles from the supplies that might have saved them. Their bodies were not found until November 1912, 8 months later, when a search party from Cape Evans finally located the tent, half buried in snow. Inside, they found Scott, Wilson, and Bowers in their sleeping bags, Wilson and Bowers apparently having died peacefully in their sleep. Scott's body was partially outside his bag, his arm stretched toward Wilson, his closest friend. The tent also contained their journals, letters, geological samples, including 35 pounds of rock specimens they had refused to abandon even when dying, and their photographic plates. The search party erected a cairn of snow over the tent and the bodies, placing a cross on top. They read a burial service, and then they returned to Cape Evans with the journals and letters. Scott and his companions remain there still, entombed in the ice, slowly moving with the glacial flow toward the sea. Meanwhile, Amundsen had returned to Framheim on January 25, 1912, just 39 days after leaving the pole. His expedition had been a complete success. The pole reached, all 5 men returned safely, and even some of their dogs surviving the journey. The Fram picked them up in late January, and by March 7, 1912, Amundsen cabled the world from Hobart, Tasmania, announcing his achievement. The news was received with mixed emotions. In Norway, there was jubilation and pride. But in Britain and other nations, some questioned whether Amundsen's secret change of plans had been honorable, whether the race had been fair. These debates would continue for years, but they could not diminish the fact of Amundsen's achievement. He had reached the South Pole first and returned safely. When news of Scott's death reached Britain in February 1913, the nation went into mourning. Memorial services were held, statues commissioned, and Scott was lionized as a tragic hero who had given his life in the pursuit of knowledge and national glory. The story of Oates' sacrifice particularly captured the public imagination, embodying ideals of duty and selflessness. The contrast between the two expeditions became a subject of endless analysis. Amundsen's journey had covered approximately 1,860 miles round trip and taken 99 days total. Scott's journey covered roughly 1,840 miles and took over 140 days, ending in death just 11 miles from safety. What accounted for the difference? Some of the answers were clear. Amundsen's use of dogs proved far superior to Scott's reliance on ponies and man-hauling. Dogs were adapted to the cold, could travel in worse weather, and required less food relative to the work they performed. Amundsen's lighter equipment, his team skiing ability, and his placement of depots closer to the pole all contributed to his efficiency. But there was also weather. The summer of 1912 was exceptionally cold, something neither expedition could have predicted. And there was luck. Amundsen encountered generally favorable conditions, while Scott faced barrier after barrier. There was also the simple matter of those 11 miles. Had the blizzard cleared for even a single day, Scott and his companions might have reached One Ton Depot and survived. In the quiet of this moment, as you rest, consider those final days in the tent. 3 men knowing they were dying, using their last strength not to curse their fate but to write letters ensuring that their story would be known, that their families would understand, that the scientific specimens they had collected would not be left behind. It speaks to something profound about human nature, about dignity in the face of death, about the drive to give meaning to suffering.